Tonight in 9 News, protest anarchy. Anti-vax tradies run riot from the top of the West Gate to the heart of the city. Innocent motorists caught up in the chaos. Brett Sutton stands his ground on mandatory jabs despite 2 days of violence. Thousands of fully vaccinated tradies forced to down tools because of the selfish actions of an out-of-control mob. COVID seeps back into aged care as the virus tightens its grip on our northern suburbs. A spring cold snap brings snow to Melbourne's doorstep. And a pair of Demons and Bulldogs legends standing by for a grand honour.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. Selfish tradies have brought shame upon our proud city, storming the Westgate Bridge and attacking police in the heart of Melbourne. The unruly mob, fighting against the vaccine, which will give us the chance to reopen, brought streets to a standstill. Dozens were arrested as they led police on a dangerous game of cat and mouse, threatening this is only the beginning. Neri Tai was there.
A sea of protesters swarmed the Westgate Bridge, one of Melbourne's busiest freeways, brought to a standstill. Tradies jumping on the back of trucks, others clinging to moving cars. Thousands of motorists trapped in their vehicles.
They looked dangerous. It was really quite frightening.
Bike riders in fluoro taunting police and harassing innocent motorists, at times encouraging them to join in.
Some parents had their kids there. The language that was being used was atrocious. Urinating on the side of the freeway.
The fired-up mob taking over Melbourne.
How the police can control it, I don't really know. Yeah, all drinking, carrying, alcohol with them.
For the second day in a row, the rally started outside the CFMEU headquarters, blockading the intersection of Victoria Parade and Elizabeth Street, demanding an end to lockdowns and mandatory vaccinations.
Why should we put that poison into our bodies?
Met with a wall of police, including the riot squad, armed with rubber bullets and tear gas, they were warned.
Leave now or force may be used. No further warnings will be given.
The crowd swelled as they marched on State Parliament. Flares were thrown, crates and glass bottles. The CBD descending into chaos.
And you can just see a number of flares being lit there. And you'll just see a flare going off there.
Police cars damaged, others surrounded.
They're throwing shit at the coppers!
Riot police responding with rubber bullets.
Whoa!
Tradies furious with compulsory jabs.
Why aren't they mandating it for the politicians first? Why don't they take it? Why don't they all get it first before us? Why do we have to get it?
Besieged union boss John Seckett claims right-wing extremists and neo-Nazis hijacked the protests.
In all my years in the trade union movement, I never thought I'd see anything like that, so pretty disappointing.
But some CFMEU members were happy to show us their badge.
I think that's the biggest thing that we are fighting for here, and that's the choice.
After a morning of cat and mouse, the protesters ended up back here outside the CFMEU headquarters. They're now marching up Victoria Parade, but there are a couple of people here still agitating police. This is the third major protest to happen in Melbourne in just days.
With the industry shut down, other tradies doing the right thing say they are suffering.
My roommate here, he's had his first jab of vaccination. He's doing the right thing, but now he's out of work, the poor guy.
One man carrying a bunch of flowers for a mate who took his own life at a construction site this morning.
We've had someone commit suicide because of this latest lockdown.
A heartfelt gesture trying to heal the hurt in a city that's endured so much. Neri Tai, 9 News.
Police are surrounding the CFMEU headquarters as protesters march back into the city. Reid Butler's there now. Reid, where are they now?
Well, Pete, last we saw these protesters, they gathered at the intersection of Elizabeth and Victoria Street, just near Queen Victoria Market, but they were met by a huge row of riot squad officers just near the CFMEU headquarters here, and that appears to have spooked these protesters. They hung around for about 10 minutes before dispersing in various directions, and at this stage they don't appear to have regathered anywhere else in the city, but they have been live streaming their march and their activities activity, so it will be one to watch to see if they do pick up their protest later on throughout the evening. Now, this has been a seriously challenging day for Victoria Police. You can see behind me here the officers are just going into their buses here and changing shifts after a very long day. We saw 44 arrests and counting as well. Just a few moments ago, we saw a man being arrested here near the Queen Victoria Market. Here is Chief Commissioner Shane Patton.
The message is clear. You cannot come in and break the law. We will hold you to account and we will focus on community safety.
And we are expecting another protest tomorrow. They were chanting all throughout the day, we will do this every day, every day. So Victoria Police are now preparing for that. The Chief Commissioner estimates as many as 2,000 protesters took part in today's rally. Pete?
Reid Butler reporting. Thank you, Reid. Despite 2 days of violence, Brett Sutton standing by his call to mandate the vaccine for construction workers. More than 300 infections are linked to the industry that's continued to fail thousands of COVID spot checks. State political reporter Mark Santamartino.
For all the anger about being forced to get vaccinated when construction was given a choice, not enough were coming forward.
There wasn't a terrific response. I think that goes down to the sense of urgency.
Brett Sutton scrapped construction's 90% vaccine target last week, enforcing no jab, no job in the name of speed, as half of the sites checked in a compliance blitz failed.
In the same way that you don't wear a hard hat on your elbow, you wear it on your head. Masks on chins were not doing the job in construction and transmission was occurring.
I mean, you've got to take that into perspective. I mean, there's a house somewhere being renovated, they go down there and there's no QR code. I mean, that's a little bit out of our control.
337 infections are directly linked to Victorian construction workers, site visitors and their contacts. 154 builds have been affected statewide, with 239 cases linked to sites in Metro Melbourne, 9 of whom live in regional Victoria.
The government was left with no alternative but to shut the industry down.
The 2-week shutdown came into effect at midnight after this violent mob shattered the front of union headquarters.
You know, there's 300,000 Victorians at the moment sitting at home with no money, thanks to these drunken morons.
This is a major blow to the Victorian economy and will put a lot of people on Commonwealth disaster payments.
There's a lot of families who will go without income for the next 2 weeks and they're the ones who are going to lose out.
$750 payments to 300,000 workers will cost taxpayers $225 million per week, while the state economy is estimated to be losing more than $1 billion in the same time period.
It's probably right. It's in that order of magnitude.
The state government should never punish the many for the sins of the few.
I had a conversation with one of our members today. He was in tears. His whole workforce is fully vaccinated.
Peter runs a home improvement business in Cheltenham. Today, he was forced to sack his own son.
It's just killing me. I've never cried so much in my life.
His son is one of 2 employees that have decided not to get vaccinated.
And I respect that. And I respect people that don't want to get vaccinated. It's wrong. Absolutely wrong. Give people a choice.
A message with merit lost in a mob that so readily turned on its own.
We're just not going to do that. We're not going to be intimidated by them. A whole lot of workers that got concerns about the vaccine and they've been whipped up and told lies by anti-vaxxers and extremists.
2 weeks is going to be the minimum. For some companies and some sites, it could be till Christmas, could be a month, could be 6 weeks, we don't know.
Get the jab done and let's get back to work.
Live to Mark at State Parliament. The Premier's released a statement, Mark.
Pete, it's come out just in the last 10 minutes or so, condemning the acts of this riotous group over the past 2 days. In part, it reads, there is no excuse for the terrible behaviour we've seen in our city over the last 2 days. Acts of violence and disruption won't result in one less case of COVID. In fact, it only helps the virus to spread. We know vaccinations are our only ticket out of this pandemic. There is no other way. We have come too far to turn back now. It's those sort of warnings that this group has heard from not only the Premier but Victoria Police for days on end now, and clearly, Pete, that isn't working and there may need to be a change of tact.
Mark Santamartino. Tens of thousands of small-scale building and renovation work sites have been closed across the state. Workers and families are now frantically trying to secure backup plans with their dream projects thrown into disarray. Business reporter Chris Kohler.
Far from any protest, 300,000 tradies across the state forced to pack up their tools. Frustration mixing with exhaustion for builder Jason Charles. His team of 12 are all double dosed, but they're being sent home all the same.
They're all vaccinated, fully vaccinated. So we're trying to do the right thing, and now this is sort of a bit of a kick in the guts.
Along with major city construction zones, an estimated 30,000 small work sites will close for 2 weeks. Timelines will immediately blow out, leaving homeowners in limbo.
There will be many families that will be forced to find additional accommodation. They might be paying additional rent. They might be paying a mortgage at the same time.
New government rules state a limited exemption applies to respond to an emergency or to perform work that would protect health and safety, and an amnesty applies for a limited number of workers to physically shut down the sites.
It's however long it takes, but we wouldn't expect this to go much longer than 2 days.
What's deemed to be safe to leave in the weather for 2 weeks, entirely open to interpretation.
It's going to be very hard to police it. It's going to be very hard to work out how far we have to go to make our site safe.
In order for sites to reopen, not only do 2 weeks have to pass, but each site will have to prove that all of its workers have had at least 1 dose of the vaccine, and managers will have to apply strict COVID-safe rules. Hopes aren't high that tools will be picked up again soon.
If that extends out past that 2 weeks, I don't know what we're going to do.
Chris Kohler, 9 News.
For the first time, the Delta outbreak in Victoria has surpassed 600 daily cases. Infections continue to spread across the northern suburbs, Delta seeping its way into aged care. Mimi Becker with the latest.
As the daily numbers reach a 12-month high, COVID is creeping back into our aged care sector, infecting 11 staff and 4 residents at Meadow Heights Care Community. But this time, there is a preventative.
94% of staff are fully vaccinated. The remainder have had 1 dose.
The infected residents have been transferred out as the state recorded 603 new cases, taking the number of active infections above 6,000.
Sadly, a woman in her 70s from the Hume region passed away.
The city of Hume is the hardest hit, with 40% of today's cases from the north.
I worry for my family, for my friends, it definitely is worrying that it's, 40%.
I was fully against getting vaccinated until yesterday, and I saw all the cases and I thought, you know what, just go do it. We've got to all join in and do it.
In total, 241 people are in hospital and only 3 are fully vaccinated. 60 people are in intensive care and 39 people need help to breathe. While hotspots like the city's north are seeing a surge in cases, there's also a boost in vaccination rates. In the past week, the city of Hume has seen first dose coverage increase by almost 10%. Commonwealth data shows another 88,000 vaccinations have been delivered across the state. More than 73% of Victorians over 16 have had 1 dose, while 44% are fully vaxxed.
I'm telling you, it is a matter of urgency. Prioritise it like your life depends upon it.
Mimi Becker, 9 News.
Scott Morrison has arrived in the United States for what's shaping up to be one of the most consequential weeks in Australia's post-war history. The diplomatic spat over the nuclear submarine pact is intensifying, with France threatening to block an EU trade deal with Australia. Here's Chris Uhlmann.
Touching down on a balmy New York evening.
I'm very pleased to be here in the United States.
But headed into a storm of French fury, which is now threatening to derail Australia's trade deal with the EU.
One of our member states has been treated in a way that is not acceptable. So we want to know what happened and why.
Explaining his surprise sub-deal to European leaders will be Scott Morrison's first priority on US soil, seeking to reassure the bloc after Australia's abrupt foreign policy change, partnering with America and Britain to go nuclear.
It would be naive to think that a decision of this nature was not going to cause disappointment. And at the end of the day, you have to do things that are in Australia's national interest.
Foreign Minister Marise Payne was denied a meeting with her French counterpart in New York today, instead meeting with EU officials who are tonight holding crisis talks about the new security pact. The US president already under scrutiny from allies over the bungled withdrawal from Afghanistan, now facing questions over whether his pledge to rebuild alliances in the post-Trump era is genuine. The White House scrambling to set up a phone call with the French president in the coming days.
You can expect the President's call will be more about reaffirming our commitment, the United States' commitment to our alliance, to our partnership.
The third amigo, Boris Johnson, is in town too. He'll have dinner with Scott Morrison in Washington tomorrow. Also on the Prime Minister's agenda, discussions about COVID response and climate change. Before the main event, a White House meeting with leaders of the Quad Alliance, Australia, America, India and Japan. In a few hours' time, the Prime Minister will sit down with Joe Biden to nut out more details of the nuclear pact, which has sparked concerns from our closest neighbours about an arms race in the Indo-Pacific. Scott Morrison now finds himself in America, putting out diplomatic fires from Europe all the way to our own doorstep. Calling Indonesia's president from the air en route to New York, reassuring him Australia is seeking peace and stability in a region on shaky ground. In New York, Amelia Adams, 9 News.
Melbourne great Gary Lyon believes the Demons have what it takes to finally end their premiership drought. The D's favourite was today joined by Dogs champion Chris Grant as they nervously prepare for their special duties on Grand Final day. Ayrton Woolley reports from Perth.
They're two blokes who share the greatest of respect. But neither of them was too keen to let go of that cup. For Gary Lyon, a Melbourne victory will come with so many emotions, not only because of how long the Demons have waited, but the dark times they've endured along the way.
It gets to a stage where you go, is it ever going to get better? And that's the reality, you know, and we were in those dark periods not so long ago. Is it ever going to turn around?
While Chris Grant saw his Bulldogs taste premiership glory 5 years ago, there's no shortage of hunger, even if today's rivalry was more of the friendly variety after their time as teammates for the Big V.
Gary was a childhood hero for me, and now I've got this opportunity of sharing the day with him. So it's a very unique situation, but really looking forward to it.
Come Saturday, Lyon and the Demons are hoping to emulate the 2016 Dogs.
You sat back and looked at all that and you thought, I want that feeling.
9-year-old Peyton Green will also have an important role this weekend.
Can I have a sit down with it next year?
Yeah. Jason
After being denied the chance to see the Dogs live back in round 15 due to a COVID outbreak, Peyton will be the club's mascot, running out with the team on Grand Final day.
You won't be able to sleep, would you?
Not tonight, I won't be able to.
In Perth, Ayrton Woolley, 9 News.
Now with a look ahead to more sport, Tony Jones.
Not sure we'll top that, Pete, but we'll give it a go. It is D-Day for the Doggies and the D's tomorrow because both sides will be gearing up for their last main training session. And with a couple of key dogs on the mend, there's some tough calls ahead. Also, a grand final rev-up from this unlucky veteran.
I want them to sort of soak up the moment. I'm implored with the playing group just be grateful for the position that they're in.
Storm flex their muscle ahead of a date with the Panthers. And here's one for you. Why the numbers 77 and 25 are so magical for our women cricketers. Bit of a mathematics question there for you, Pete, from someone that failed dismally in maths. Anyway, I'll explain later.
Same here. Thank you, Tony. A court told the pilot who was flying the plane which crashed into Essendon DFO earlier failed a major skills test. Justin Trudeau narrowly survives an election challenge after gambling on an early poll. And snow in spring, a late season dusting on Melbourne's doorstep. The Prime Minister has arrived in New York ahead of crucial meetings about the nuclear sub-deal. Live, live to political editor Chris Hulman. Chris, Scott Morrison says he has Australia's national interest at heart, but has he mishandled the diplomacy?
But Pete, in the words of one American commentator, there is no elegant way to cancel a wedding, and in the long run the new agreement with the UK and the US promises much more than nuclear submarines. But it's vital that relations with France are repaired, and it's as much a problem for Washington as it is for Canberra. It's good that Scott Morrison has spoken to the Indonesian president because Jakarta needs to be reassured that our arms build-up does not threaten it. And the Prime Minister's most crucial diplomatic meeting this week is with the leaders of what's called the Quad, a new strategic partnership between Australia, India, Japan and the United States. Building ties with like-minded countries is much more likely to curb Beijing's aggression than buying weapons. We don't want war and we can't win an arms race with China, Pete, but we can win a friends race.
Chris Hulman in Canberra. Thank you, Chris. A Werribee funeral thief has avoided jail after pleading guilty to stealing money from mourners at a service in Hampton Park. Paul Pecora mingled with the congregation before taking envelopes of money meant to go to cancer research. The 60-year-old father has previously been jailed for taking $7,000 from a young father's memorial service in Avondale Heights. Pecora must now serve a community corrections order and undergo mental health treatment to address his gambling addiction. An inquest into the deadly 2017 plane crash at Essendon DFO has heard the pilot had failed a crucial test 2 years before the tragedy. Max Quatermain was under investigation for a near-miss collision at Mount Hotham. Court reporter Eliza Rugg.
Pilot Max Quatermain was in a job where he couldn't afford to make mistakes, but in February 2017 his errors proved deadly. He was due to take 4 American tourists from Essendon Airport to Kangaroo Island for a golf trip, but the rudder trim on his plane had been left in the wrong position, causing the aircraft to turn sharply to the left after takeoff. It crashed into the DFO shopping centre, killing everyone on board. 2 years earlier at Mount Hotham, Mr Quatermain had almost collided with another plane mid-air. He then failed a key competency test with a CASA inspector on board. The coroner said today, "This was a very serious incident. You were ready to take over control of the aircraft." "Yes, that is correct," the inspector replied. "Have you ever found yourself in such similar circumstances?" "Nowhere near this state. It was a major failure." But the inspector said he considered it premature to suspend or cancel Mr Quatermain's pilot licence. Instead, he recommended remedial training. On the day of the fatal crash, Max Quatermain either didn't notice there were issues with the plane's rudder trim, or he deliberately but mistakenly placed it in the wrong position. There's also evidence he had a history of confusing flight instruments. The inquest continues. Eliza Rugg, 9 News.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has narrowly won the country's election, falling short of a majority government. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, whose party placed second, conceded defeat to Trudeau after a tight day at the polls, admitting the PM's Liberal Party had a mandate to govern. Trudeau has been in power since 2015. The number of Americans who've died from COVID-19 has now eclipsed the number of those killed by the Spanish flu. The death toll from the pandemic rose above 675,000. The state of Alabama has actually seen its population shrink for the first time in history. Spring snow has dusted Melbourne's doorstep in what's likely to be one of the last snowfalls of the year. Towns like Marysville woke to a blanket of white, and many parts of the state endured a freezing night. Maggie Rayworth reports.
Glistening snow made for one sparkling white wonderland. In the eyes of a child, it was the perfect playground. Why do you like it so much?
Because it's very pretty.
From green to white, the road to the Black Spur was powdered overnight. A visual show for early risers, layers of frost spread across the mountain. Alpine areas were the coldest, dropping to -7 degrees overnight and receiving 15 centimetres of snow.
It certainly was cold enough to support snow. We saw up to 70 millimetres at Mount Donaboang.
A thick sheet blanketed a deserted Mount Hotham. Fluffy snow sprinkled over rooftops. Marysville received a decent dusting too, white as far as the eye could see. At Brighton, swimmers braved the cold, taking an early morning plunge, as did these children. A touch of frost not enough to deter them from play.
So you can just go back and have a shower.
But with the cold came strong winds and more than 110 calls for help.
Mostly trees down. Some of our busiest units were Hamilton Unit, Emerald Unit, Moe and Pakenham units.
For those who weren't lucky enough to catch a glimpse of this today, they'll have another chance late on Friday. More falls are expected in higher areas of the state. And as we head into the hotter months, it may just be the last opportunity.
Probably go splashing puddles on my bike.
A moment these children will no doubt make the most of. Maggie Rayworth, 9 News.
And Lavinia's along now with more on our spring cold snap. It does feel very cold for this time of the year, Lavinia.
Absolutely, Pete. Low-level snow this late in the year is very unusual, but we can get some very cold days in September. Last year it only reached 11.9 on the 25th, and the coldest September day on record was just 8.3. That was on the 11th of September 1969. So by comparison, today was quite mild, peaking at 13.2, and even though it was was colder than yesterday. Without the gusty winds, the feels-like temperatures didn't get quite as low, 7 or 8, compared to yesterday's 3 or 4. But fortunately, this cold snap is short and sharp, and that's a promise. It'll start warming up tomorrow, and I'll have those details later in the bulletin, Pete.
OK, thank you, Lavinia. The son of former Adelaide Crows coach Phil Walsh has been granted unsupervised leave from a mental health facility. 3 mate playdates for children in New South Wales. But what about our kids? And street by street, lava swallows homes whole.
9 News, brought to you by Nearmap, the most intelligent aerial map on Earth.
Six years after stabbing his father to death, the son of former Crows coach Phil Walsh has been given unsupervised leave in the community. Cy Walsh won his bid for freedom from mental health detention, allowing him to go on day trips without a minder. The 32-year-old had undiagnosed schizophrenia when he killed his father at their Adelaide home in 2015. The decision has the support of Walsh's family. Parents and psychologists are hoping Victoria follows New South Wales by introducing a friends bubble for children in lockdown. It would enable 3 mates to have exclusive in-home playdates and give both kids and parents a much-needed break. Medical reporter Emily Rice explains.
Port Melbourne siblings Nora, Penny and Jack are the best of friends, but Mum Sophie admits that after so long in lockdown, they are hanging out to visit their own mates.
They do get along nicely, but there is only so much time that they can spend together.
6-year-old Nora misses her best friend.
Her name's Esther and I have not seen her for a very long time.
Children in New South Wales can now catch up under one roof again thanks to a new buddy bubble policy.
We need this as much as they do.
Under the 3-friend bubble rules, each child can nominate 2 friends to come to their house. All must live within 5 kilometres or the same council area. Everyone else in the home over 18 must be fully vaccinated. And parents must drop off the children and not stay to socialise.
They're missing out on so much at the moment with not being at school, not having birthday parties, activities. So I think if they could have that friend bubble, it would just bring something back for them.
Child psychologist Dr Michael Carr-Gregg says the 3-mate playdate scheme should be adopted here.
Being stuck at home, isolated from them, is incredibly bad for their mental health and their development. So this does address it head on.
Any good idea is one that, of course, the public health team would look at.
So what does little Nora think of a potential home visit to her best mate's place?
That would be perfect.
Emily Rice, 9 News.
The Queen has a new great-grandchild to gush over, announcing Princess Beatrice gave birth to a girl on Saturday night. No name as yet, but the bub weighed 6 pounds 2 ounces and is 11th in line to the throne. It's not yet known whether Prince Andrew will pay his new granddaughter a visit. The Duke today served court papers from accuser Virginia Giuffre. US authorities have released the 911 call that prompted police to check on Gabby Petito 1 month before she vanished. A witness reportedly saw the travel blogger's fiancé Brian Laundrie hitting her on the streets of Utah before they drove off in a white van.
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
The FBI has stormed Brian Laundrie's family home. Investigators are yet to track him down. To finance, and the share market rebounded from yesterday's heavy selling while the Australian dollar also rose. Business reporter Chris Kohler.
After $50 billion was wiped off the market yesterday, investors crept back in today. Gains from Telstra, CSL and realestate.com all helped push the index higher. And travel companies also did well after cheap interstate fares were unveiled. APA Group was the worst performer in a mixed bag of strugglers. The Australian dollar was stronger today, but it remains below 73 US cents and 62 euro cents. It's also buying just above 53 British pence.
The threat of an eruption on Spain's Canary Islands is refusing to subside. Lava expected to spew from the volcano for weeks to come. The Spanish Prime Minister is right now overseeing rescue efforts, with thousands fleeing their homes, more than 100 of which are destroyed. Europe correspondent Brett McLeod.
A smouldering landscape where an unstoppable force has consumed all before it. Lava has crept through the island street by street, edging towards the doors of holiday homes before they're destroyed. Pools turning to boiling pots as the scorching tide spills over. Firefighters and police could do nothing to slow the spread, although they did manage to get some livestock out of harm's way. A camera on a nearby observatory showing how the La Palma volcano burst to life against the night sky. Police ordering evacuations.
Por favor, desalojen las viviendas.
There were 5 fissures torn into the hillside, 4 villages in its path, and thousands of people fled, including tourists.
I phoned the lady who's where we're living, and she said she doesn't know if the house is still standing.
Even as the molten monster slowed over the next hours, the lava gave off potentially dangerous gases. The Prime Minister speaking to rescue workers, giving him the good news that no one had been killed or injured.
Lo más importante es garantizar la seguridad.
He said the most important thing is safety. We're still in a stage of eruption. Stay as far as possible. A message missed by Spain's tourism minister, who said the volcano might actually lure tourists back to the Canary Islands to see the wonderful natural spectacle, a spectacle many could have lived without. Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Up next, the weight loss pill designed to shift stubborn belly fat, and it's been designed right here in Victoria. Plus, Alan Rascal tours the neighbourhood museums, bringing culture to your street. And generous locals take the plunge to rescue a stranded roo. Returning to our top story, and police are still manning Elizabeth Street after protesters swarmed the city. Reid Butler's near CFMEU headquarters. Reid, what's the latest there?
Well, Pete, for the first time all day, we can report that things appear to have quietened down. Have a look at the intersection of Elizabeth and Victoria Street right now, just near CFMEU headquarters. It appears normal. Just an hour ago, this is where at least 100 protesters had gathered after leading police on that cat and mouse chase throughout the city from Parliament to over the Westgate Bridge. It appears they ended their march here at this intersection near CFMEU headquarters, but it was here that they were greeted by a huge row of police from the Mounted Brigade, police with batons and shields as well, and that may have spooked them. Last we saw, this was about an hour ago, the protesters dispersed. Our live pictures from the helicopter hasn't appeared to show that they've congregated elsewhere, so this could have been the final spot of the protest today, hopefully. They are planning, though, more protest activity tomorrow. Today, during the height of the chaos, we heard chanting will be back, and every day. So police will no doubt be gearing up for another huge day tomorrow. Today there were 44 arrests, Pete. Several police officers were injured as well. So everyone just hoping that we don't see this chaos repeated tomorrow.
Indeed, thank you very much. Reid Butler reporting. We've long been warned of the dangers of putting on excess weight around our waist. Now, a landmark Australian study has uncovered how one pill can target belly fat and reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. Kate Creedon explains.
Tum, dad bod, beer gut, jelly belly. It's the stubborn pocket of fat that increases our risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. But researchers from Monash University have come up with a way to treat the process that causes weight to form around our waist.
We're pretty excited that it's going to be a new approach to treat type 2 diabetes.
The 8-year study, conducted in collaboration with Melbourne, South Australia and Auckland universities and published in Nature Metabolism, found consuming a high-fat diet causes the lymphatic vessels that drain the gut to grow. Over time, they become more branched and leak into fat cells, resulting in excess belly fat and insulin resistance. Researchers then set out to develop a treatment using a modified anti-inflammatory drug and a novel delivery system to reverse the lymphatic vessel changes.
I guess the magic is that the drug's attached to this fat, and when you take it, it gets absorbed through those pathways into the lymph and goes directly to the site where you need it to work.
The next step is for the treatment to be trialled on people with pre-diabetes to determine if this method is more effective than existing treatments. The delivery system has been patented by Monash and sold to a US biotech to develop future drug treatments.
We need to try to make better treatments because this is what's shortening people's lives in general.
Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Our famous galleries and museums might be closed due to lockdown, but that doesn't mean you can't get your art fix. Neighbourhood museums are popping up in the streets of Brunswick, created by pint-sized curators. Alan Raskell was given a tour.
It's a chance to take in some culture and get to know your neighbours.
Who are the people in your neighbourhood? In your neighbourhood.
Welcome to the Neighbourhood Museum. Little curators creating gallery-worthy installations in specially made boxes on their front fence, like that created by little Florence.
So Florence, can you tell me about your museum? What's in it?
A jellyfish, some fishes, a seahorse, and mermaids and seaweed and waves and sand.
We've already seen whole Spoonville villages pop up in the suburbs in the past and even been taken on a teddy bear trail while out for permitted exercise. 9-year-old Alfie proud of her contribution to the suburban museums.
That little character is falling off a raft made out of wooden skewers.
It's all the brainchild of Georgie Greer, who used to work at the Arts Centre.
My heart has burst, honestly, at every single one that I've either seen or been sent a photo of. It's really lovely to see what the kids are creating.
Images of the various museums are now popping up on social media. So we may not be able to visit our fabulous galleries and museums, but that doesn't mean you can't get to enjoy some art. It's as easy as walking down the street. Alan Raskell, 9 News.
Canberra locals have banded together to help a kangaroo to safety. The shivering marsupial was found frozen with fear in the shallows of Lake Burley Griffin this morning. 2 men approached it cautiously before picking it up and carrying it safely to dry land. Now, returning with sport, Tony Jones.
Thank you, Peter. Hello again. Up next, the grand final battle begins at the selection table. Here's Ed and Woolley.
Tony, it looms as a really crucial 24 hours for a number of players on the selection front, with some tough luck stories looming. I'll have the details next.
Thanks, Ed. And also coming up after the break, umpire Stevic lands his 8th straight decider after a rollercoaster year. And 25 not out. The winning streak continues for our cricketers. Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs face agonising selection calls in the next 24 hours as they finalise their teams for the grand final. Let's go live now to Etten Woolley in Perth. Etten, tomorrow, well, as you told us earlier, it will be crucial for both clubs.
It certainly will be, Tony. Both clubs holding their main sessions tomorrow, closed sessions at Optus Stadium. For the Bulldogs, another box that Alex Keith needs to tick in his comeback from a hamstring injury. He's all but certain to return, which means the Dogs will need to make a decision between Ryan Gardner and Zane Cordy in defence, while Cody Waitman's return will also cause some selection headaches.
Keith is trained well, Cody's trained well. It's going to be a very difficult situation for both coaching groups to select what is now 23 players to represent the club on Saturday night.
For the Demons, meanwhile, another relatively light session earlier today. Charlie Spargo stepped up his work after his training mishap on the weekend. The Demons selection call set to come down to Joel Smith versus Michael Hibberd, perhaps in defence. Meanwhile, the AFL today confirmed the umpires for the grand final. First-timer Jacob Mollison alongside veterans Brett Roseberry and Matt Stevic. Certainly been an eventful year for Stevic, who'll umpire in his 9th grand final, of course involved in that Toby Green incident today. He said he'd brushed it off pretty quickly, albeit it's still hanging over his head as that appeal is to be heard after the grand final.
Once week 1 was done and the tribunal was done, it was about week 2 and Brisbane and the Bulldogs, and what an amazing game that was. So, yeah, it was fairly easy to move on pretty quick.
The umps will no doubt be hoping it's a little less eventful on Saturday, Tony.
Yeah, all right. You say closed training sessions tomorrow. Did you take your drone over?
No, but we've got the chopper all sorted, Tony. I know that's right up your alley, so we'll have that for you tomorrow night.
The chopper. Those were the days. All right, good on you, Ed, and thanks for that. Retired Demon Nathan Jones has reached out to his teammates, urging them to be grateful for the opportunity. The Melbourne favourite will be cheering on from home come Saturday, but says he doesn't regret the decision to leave Perth. He spoke with Clint Stanaway.
Nathan Jones has always been one to wear his heart on his sleeve, and after a whirlwind few days, his head's a bit all over the place.
Probably the ultimate consolation, really, the situation that I'm in. It's I think that's been the difficult thing, sort of juggling all those emotions that go into it.
The arrival of twins Dove and Odie has given the Jones family a moment they'll never forget. Thankfully, it was one the former Melbourne captain didn't miss after hightailing it back from Perth.
Absolutely don't regret the decision to get home, and thankfully I made it in time.
4 days out from the grand final, there is a tinge of sadness about Jones's predicament, but this demon isn't looking for sympathy.
I'm super excited. There's a whole heap of joy and happiness, as I said before, and ultimately pride in terms of where the club finds itself now.
Jones has been chatting with captain Max Gawn almost daily and will keep doing so right up until game time. Now retired, he's still a vital member of the team, a team that stands on the verge of something extra special.
I've got heaps of texts from a lot of players and a lot of my mates, and I've obviously kept in touch. Ultimately, they're as best prepared as ever, really.
As for grand final day itself, Jones will grab a Sporting Globe footy pack and settle in for a big night on the couch. A rather unfamiliar place to watch the footy.
I want them to sort of soak up the moment. I implored with the playing group just be grateful for the position that they're in.
And for his tip, his head and his heart say the same thing.
I think they'll get it done. I was only saying to Max yesterday, I just love the script.
Clint Stanaway, 9 News.
There's movement at Carlton tonight, but not in its coaching ranks. Midfielder Sam Petrevski-Seton wants a trade to West Coast after battling to break into the Blues' best 22. And as master coach Alistair Clarkson rejected yet another advance to take the reins at Princes Park, Hawthorn star Jager O'Meara is predicting a very different game plan in Clarko's absence.
I think Sam's going to have a bit more of an attacking approach to his game plan. Clarko was a bit more defensive, so you might see that in our game.
Michael Voss remains in the box seat to land the Blues' top job. Some teenage brilliance has helped Australia to its first win of the new cricket season. 18-year-old tearaway Darcy Brown snared 4 for 33, restricting India to 224. Now, Alyssa Healy did the damage with the bat, scoring 77 runs from 77 balls while wearing number 77.
She doesn't do anything in half measures, Alyssa Healy. What a way to bring up a half century.
The 9-wicket victory taking their one-day winning streak to a remarkable 25 matches. There's the magical numbers, 77 and 25.
It makes sense now. Thank you, Tony. Lavinia returns now. It won't be so cold tomorrow, will it, Lavinia?
Oh, Pete, it'll be quite a pleasant Wednesday with much more favourable conditions. Higher temperatures, lighter winds, a much calmer day all around. I'll have the full forecast for you next. Hello again. It's been another very chilly day across Victoria, and for the city it was even colder than yesterday. It peaked at 13.2, but because it wasn't as windy, feels like temperatures weren't so brutal. Still in single figures though, the numbers in blue are the feels like temperatures at 3 p.m, mostly 6 to 9 degrees. Yesterday they fell below zero through western suburbs. There's been very little rainfall since 9 a.m. after some chunky numbers overnight, generally 15 to 20 through eastern suburbs, 5 to 10 through the west. The Yarra Ranges recorded the highest rainfall totals overnight, 78 millimetres at Warburton, and it was cold enough to fall as snow to very low levels, down to 300 metres at Marysville. The best snowfalls were 30 to 40 centimetres over Mount Donabuang, Lake Mountain and Mount Baw Baw. And with 2 weeks to go in the ski season, our alpine resorts were thrilled to wake to more than 15 centimetres of fresh snow. Temperatures plummeted to -7, and locals have told us that the conditions have been much more like the middle of winter than spring. Showers have persisted through the southeast of the state today, generally less than 10 millimetres. The chilly conditions extended statewide with minimums and maximums well below the September average. Only parts of the Mallee climbed above 15. But conditions will improve tomorrow as a high pressure system moves a little closer. Winds will ease, showers will clear. It'll be even warmer on Thursday as winds tend northwesterly. And another cool change will move in on Friday, and that will leave behind some colder air for the weekend. But tomorrow, both minimums and maximums will take a jump. It'll be 4 or 5 degrees warmer overnight through northern districts, 2 or 3 warmer through the south. Then most locations across the state will climb into the high teens. Slightly higher through the Mallee with maximums of 20. Slightly cooler at Ballarat, 15 degrees and 16 at Hamilton. Drizzly showers will return to Melbourne tonight, mostly through southeastern suburbs and the Dandenong Ranges. They'll hang around into the early morning, but it won't be as cold, with minimums of 8 and 9, 10 for Moorabbin and Frankston. Then under cloudy skies and gentle southwesterly breezes, it'll warm up into the high teens, 17 through eastern suburbs, 18 degrees through the west. For the city, a top of 17 after an overnight low of 10. Thursday is looking like the pick of the week, up to 21 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Windy on Friday with showers from the mid-morning. It'll warm up to 18 around lunchtime before a cool change arrives. Back to 14 on Saturday with a light shower, 15 on Sunday. Breaks of sunshine and light winds, up to 20 degrees on Monday under sunny skies and 20 again next Tuesday. Tomorrow things will start to improve weather-wise. After dropping to 10 degrees, the city should warm up to 17 under gentle southwesterly breezes. So much nicer tomorrow, Pete.
Sounds good. Thank you, Lavinia. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Tuesday. Tracy's next with the current affair. Enjoy your evening, stay safe and good night.